So I'm going to hand on to James Smith from Hymans Robertson, who's going to talk to us about the hidden costs of financial stress. James.
Awesome. Thank you, Jake. Yeah, when it comes to rating at the end, good ones only, please. It's lovely to meet you all. As Jake said, my name is James Smith. I'm at Hymans Robertson Personal Wealth. My day job is I'm a client director there, and I look after and I work with people like yourselves, benefit specialists, HR folk, on building inclusive and solid financial wellbeing strategies for your people. But we're not here to talk about my day job. I'm also an actuary by trade for my sins. If you don't know what an actuary is, that's probably a good thing. But it's a bit like I've got a passion for data and numbers like Hannah Fry does. I just don't have the social skills, the podcast, the TV show, or the radio show. But we are hoping, we live in hope, it might come. I'm actually here to talk to you today and share exclusively some new research that we've done at Hymans around the financial stress levels of UK employees. I'm really excited about that because I am a data nerd, so to be able to talk about numbers is a good thing. And I'm going to make a promise to you, hopefully in this final session, to keep some energy high and keep you going to the end, that you will be able to, at the end of this session, go away with some new useful insights. I hope that you will go away with some tangible actions that you can take. I'm also going to give you the opportunity to be able to get an idea of the financial stress of your workforce in less than 60 seconds. Big claim. We'll see how that goes. But because I'm an actuary, I do like to look at the past as a way to understand how things are at the moment. And I'm going to rove a little bit, and I'm mindful there's a slide there and a slide there. So to looking at the past, it's important because whilst we experience financial stress today, it is often as a result of our lived experience over many years and our habits and behaviours that we have built around our money. And so it's important to look back over the last 40 years to understand how different parts of the workforce have experienced and understood their finances and what has happened that has caused them to feel the stresses that they have today. So we're going to go on a whistle-stop tour from the 80s all the way through to today. I'm going to sort of draw out these big things that happened over that period. So in the 80s, at the big bang and boom, there was financial services deregulation. We saw privatisation of utilities, various other businesses out in the UK, providing people the ability to buy shares for the first time and save and sort of invest for the first time on a personal level. We also saw the right to buy, so lots of social housing was made available to people, so lots of people were able to get on the ladder when they hadn't been able to do that before. We roll into the 90s, and there's a bit of the UK crashed out the ERM, right, in the early 90s. But there was good news towards the end of the 90s. What happened there was ISAs became available for the first time. We started to see this ability to save in a good and tax-efficient way. Into the noughties, this is a bit more my era now, I will say. Credit boom, credit was really cheap, house prices surged. And then we all remember, or most of us will remember, the global financial crisis in 2008, where banks failed and big institutions were rocked. And ever since then, we have been feeling this pain of austerity, and we were ushered into that age in the 2010s. But again, there was good news in the 2010s. Pensions auto-enrolment, after 15 years of being talked about, finally made it through, and we are going to start seeing people today, or people joining the workforce in the 2010s, be the first generation, hopefully ever, to see pension contributions throughout their whole life. And then 2020's brought us back to reality. COVID slapped us around the face, and we kind of went, okay, we're going to have to spend our way out of this. And that was going to have to get paid for at some point, which is what has sparked high interest rates, high inflation, the pain that lots of people are seeing today. The reason I was saying this out, as I said, is that the history is important to understand people's financial stresses today. And where the different generations joined the workforce dictates what they have experienced. So we might think that actually, because of the different experiences of these workforces, that they have different stresses and they have different needs, which when you get to a micro level, that is largely the case. But what I'm going to share with you today is that there are some big common themes. So we did some research in the last over the last sort of 2 or 3 years. At the back end of 2022, we spoke to employees And the number one ask of them was for financial wellbeing support of their employers when it came to sort of the 4 facets of wellbeing. Last year, we looked at midlifers, those in and around Generation X, deliberately around their feelings around retirement, and 1 in 5 told us that their retirement worries were impacting them at work. And at the end of last year, we asked employers where financial wellbeing sat on your agenda, and from a budget perspective, it came last. So there's an interesting disconnect between what it is that people are wanting and needing and what is actually being made available. Now, I know it's not easy. Benefits are sticky. If we could solve this immediately, we would, but we can't. However, what we've then done is we've used this. Sorry, I'm an actuary, and what gets measured gets managed, right? So we look after financial risk, and financial stress is a financial risk to your businesses. And so we wanted a way to be able to measure this through time and track how people's financial stress is impacting them. So the research that we did this year, we went and spoke to 2,000 people. We asked them 25 questions, covering everything from their short-term essentials, emergencies, the ability to cope and with insurance needs, protection, and their longer-term planning. And we also asked them about how this impacted them at work, this financial stress impacted them at work, and around how it impacted their productivity, their loyalty to you as their employers, and the trust that they place in you as their employers. And with a handful of those questions around the frequency of their worry and the confidence that they have in their financial futures, we've been able to create a single index that we're able to track through time. Each individual scores a point, or gets a score, and based on those scores, they get tagged as one of 3 groups: financially vulnerable, cautiously coping, or financially resilient. And this year, we're able to share that if you went and picked a random person in the UK, they are most likely financially vulnerable. Less than a third are financially resilient. With that, as I said, we just wanted a single index. We want to know how these different groups interact. We want less people in blue. We want more people in yellow. We want to shrink that green as well. But overall, by scoring a point for vulnerable, half a point for coping, and 0 points for resilient, we come up with an index of 52.3. That's out of 100. You would get 100 if everybody was vulnerable. We do not want that. You would get 0 if everybody was resilient. Now that's helpful-ish, I guess. Not super helpful unless you have an employee base that is a perfect representation of UK society, working across every single sector, earning across all pay bands, so that's not really helpful. But what is helpful is when we dig into different demographics, because this will help you try to build a picture of what your workforce might be feeling. If we start with gender, I'm going to share with you the most unsurprising and depressing fact of the day, that men are less stressed than women when it comes to their finances. It's no surprise here, but we are able to measure it, and we are able to see that women are 12 points worse off than men when it comes to their financial stress. What I found interesting when I was digging into the data was that all of that comes from the financial vulnerability segment. 30% of men are financially vulnerable versus just over 42% of women, which means that women are 1.4 times more likely to be financially vulnerable than men in work. After gender, we look at geography. There's a couple little surprises in here, some stuff that I didn't expect to see. On the right-hand side is a colour chart. Down here is a key. The most financially resilient areas are dark yellow. The most financially vulnerable areas are darker blue. There's a spread of about 15 points when we look at region. And if we look on the left-hand side here, we can see Northern Ireland is dark blue. Northern Ireland is the most financially stressed region in the UK. And as we scan down the UK, we see Wales closely behind, followed by the southwest. And the interesting thing I took away was that actually the east of England is the least financially stressed region. I think all of us normally think it's going to be London. But actually London fell behind the east of England and also the northwest. London is an interesting picture, and hopefully you'll get to subscribe to our research and the sort of announcements over the coming months. But London paints an interesting picture where there is a large group who are financially vulnerable and also a very large group who are financially resilient, very little in the middle ground. It's like a V-shaped distribution. Beyond geography, the final facet of demographic that I wanted to look at is by generation. This point, after looking at Gen X last year, we really wanted to dig into this a little bit more. The least financially stressed generation are the baby boomers. There are a handful of them still in work, but they are on their way through to retirement. Over half, or nearly half, of boomers are financially resilient today in work. That falls off an absolute cliff when you hit Gen X. They are the most financially stressed generation in work today. Millennials and Gen Z are closely behind. And what's interesting when we look at this is it means that baby boomers are skewing our UK average. So as they continue to leave the workforce, that UK average score that I shared earlier is probably going to go up a little bit. The 52.8s, they're not typos. They are exactly the same despite the differences here because of how things are scored. Now, what are those drivers of stress? We talked earlier about, I shared earlier about the history that people have experienced. And we might expect that the different generations have different drivers of stress. But actually at a top level, they don't. They all shared that one of their leading drivers of stress was the short-term needs around a rising cost of living. Boomers and Gen Z actually have something to bond over for once. So they both shared that they're not able to enjoy some luxuries in life. So any Gen Z in the room who get told about, stop complaining about your avo on toast, you can tell the boomers to stop complaining about the cost of their Saga cruises. Next up was long-term financial responsibility. So again, everybody, the darker green, for those that can make out the different colours on the screen, was this paying off debt. All generations said that they have this stress around paying off debt. Gen X and Gen Z then share in the supporting of their family, directly their children. And Gen Z talked about affording rent and mortgages, similar to Gen X as well. Finally, the other leading driver of stress is this need to save, this want and need to save. For boomers and Gen X, it's more focused around retirement, as we may well expect. Millennials follow suit slightly, but then have other savings goals. Maybe it's housing, maybe it's their kids. Gen Z comes in behind with saving for a goal other than retirement. Now, the eagle-eyed might notice that this box, this bottom right grey box for boomers, didn't light up. Does anybody want to have a guess as what that is? Come on, energy. Go on.
Supporting their children.
Wrong. Nothing at all. No stresses, unsurprisingly, because they are the least stressed generation. They went, I don't know what you're complaining about. I'm literally fine. Bleak reality, that, isn't it? But this stress is important to understand because it does bleed into work, and financial stress shows itself in different ways. And we asked people about how financial stress is impacting them at work. And 2/3 of people, 2 in 3, said that financial stress and worries about money is impacting their engagement and motivation in work. Over half said that worries about money has led them to look for other jobs. And 1/3 have taken time out of work as a result of financial worries or the implications of that. But there are 2 things that are within your gift as employers to be able to help people. You are unlikely to be able to immediately change the demographics of your workforce. You're not going to just lift up all those folk in Belfast and sling them into Norwich. That's not going to happen. But you can help them with saving, and you can help them with broader support. And I wanted to pick on these 2 because they are key elements that have shown lower financial stress when in place. So when we look at total savings levels, I don't know if anybody in the room was here with a good friend of mine, Emily Trant and Joe from Nest, talking about sidecar savings. This is kind of what they're trying to crack, right? So where people save more, and you move from having less than £1,000 of saving through these savings brackets, your financial stress levels drop, markedly so at the £1,000 mark. Beyond that, it's a slight taper down. But what I find more interesting is when you look at the accessible savings levels in terms of sort of income available to them in the event that something bad happens. And so when you look at the same picture but from accessible savings, the picture is more pronounced. And so those who have less than a month's worth of sort of income available to them They are just as stressed as those with about £1,000. And as we hit that 1 to 3 months point, that stress drops significantly by 21 points, but that picture continues as people continue to be able to save in a way that is accessible to them in the event that something bad happens. So there's a direct link there between savings and stress. Now, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make it drink unless you are Joe Phillips at Nest and the sidecars will take off and whatnot. Then actually we will be able to build those pictures of savings. But at the moment, it's hard to do. You have to have it in place. They still have to save. But when we look at financial wellbeing support and those who provide it and those who don't, and the financial stresses of their people, there is a significant difference. Sorry, I've jumped way ahead. Come back to me. I asked them what they thought of financial wellbeing support. We asked employees, what do you think of them? What do you think of it? Where would you like help? And I've just given the game away with my last slide, but it's fine. And what do you want from your employer? 63% said that they wanted they felt that it was a priority of their employer to provide them with education or support around their money. 3 in 5 said that support around their finances from their employer would make them less likely to look for another job. But despite this, less than a third said that they understood to be receiving financial wellbeing support at work. But what is it that people want? So I'm going to come back to those kind of colour blocks quickly. When we look at what people want, again, similarly earlier, there is a general theme across the board. So we look here and we see that everybody, boomers, Gen X, millennials, want education, guidance and advice. Gen Z, and so the lighter pink is this ability to speak to an expert. All of these generations said they want the ability to speak to an expert. Retirement and pensions guidance was a dominant feature for boomers, Gen X and millennials. Gen Z, they don't care about that yet. But they want education, they do want information, they want tools in order to support them. Next up was the ability to save, short-term saving support and emergency financial assistance. So there's this direct connection between what people were saying earlier about their stresses and the help that they want in order to reduce that. All flagging the short-term saving support and these emergency hardship loans. Finally, to address the rising cost of living, all generations flagged that they wanted to be able to have access to discount schemes in order to support them. Finally, there are 2 boxes again that did not light up. That is this one, the far left one on boomers, and the second one for Gen X. They said that no workplace support would make the biggest difference at all. Now, I think that's, when I look at this, this is boomers going, again, I don't know what the problem is, I don't need any help. Whereas Gen X, this is a sense of apathy that we noticed in our research last year, that there's such a level of defeatism that any help, it's just not going to shift the dial for me. So I shared earlier what's the impact of support, and I kind of gave it away a little bit. But those who do not provide support to their employees, the financial stress of those not in receipt of financial support at work is 58.2. And that drops by over 16 points to 41.9 in the event of provision of financial wellbeing support. That is a bigger gap than the gap between men and women, the gap between Northern Ireland and the east of England, and the gap between generations. And it's entirely within your gift to be able to support them with it. It's the biggest difference that you can make, aside from whacking great pay rises, right? But that's probably not going to happen either. But what is the impact of that support on you as the employer? This picture of being able to move the vulnerable through to the resilient, right? Because that is what we're seeing. This massive drop-off in vulnerability, coping stays a similar size, and that's showing that people are moving into this bracket of resilience. Well, when we look at those who who we score as being resilient versus those who we score as being vulnerable, the productivity goes up. So those who are vulnerable, 52% shared that it impacted their motivation, their productivity at work, versus 21% of those who are resilient. So we're reducing that massively. Loyalty improves, so 2/3 of those who were vulnerable said they'd look for another job versus just 1/3 of those who were resilient. And absence drops as well. So 40% of those who are vulnerable said they're taking time out of work versus around 30% of those who are resilient. So there's a real life impact to this and to you in your businesses. So I'm going to leave you with a couple of things. So what should you do? Easier said than done. And I know that lots of you are all over this already, but it's important to continue to make the point, is understand the workforce and their desire for their support when you're selecting your benefits. As we've seen, there is a massive call for 3 things. And so if you're going to do anything, it is these 3. It is meaningful guidance, it is discount schemes, and it is support around their savings. And as I said to you earlier, I would give you an opportunity. And that opportunity is this. Based on our research, we are able to make an informed guess at the financial stress of your workforce. So if you haven't visited our stand already, we're at stand 27. I want you to come and say hello. We've got a little tool that will helpfully give you an idea as to where you might measure up versus the UK average. But if you're not able to, because you're just like, I'm chomping for a drink and I want to go and see Joanna Lumley and I've got other stuff to do beforehand, that's fine. If you scan our QR code here, and put in your details, we'll contact you later and we'll find time to get that score for you. It's free of charge, no requirements from anybody here. So, I said I'd leave some time. That says 3 minutes, but that got started late. So, we're good to go?
Thank you, James.
Good.
Thank you.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
There's at least one person who's running to the stand to get...
Yeah. Give me that score. Yeah. Give me that score now.
Form an orderly queue. That was really good. Thank you. There's a couple of questions in the chat. The first one, did you look at financial stress through an ethnicity lens?
So when we looked at stresses, when people were asked to respond, there were a number of other factors that we looked at when we looked at this. So we looked at things like wage brackets, we looked at industry, we looked at maybe. I feel like, yeah, I'm not sure, sorry. I know that it wasn't one of the ones that I was picking up on, and I feel like it would have been something that I would have drilled into.
I guess there's some proxy on the geographies as well.
Yeah, I mean, speaking really bluntly, there's lots of cross-correlation as well between different factors, and this is me being an actuary now, but it's not perfect. But, wages in certain regions are lower and greater than others, and so it's not a perfect science, but it is giving us a steer. But it's something that I can confirm that later and dig into that.
Okay. The next one is... Do you think that millennials and Gen Z will become similarly disillusioned and apathetic as Gen X is regarding financial support as they get older, given the economy, but also, I guess, as they get closer to retirement?
Yeah, that's a bleak question, isn't it?
Come on, put your hand up.
No, I actually don't. I don't think that they will. So one of the interesting things that we drew out, so that stat that I shared about the 63% who said that they would like. They think that employers should prioritise their financial well-being. For Gen X and the boomers, that was only 50%, yet it was 75% of millennials and Gen Z. So there's a clear value shift in between those generations as to what they expect of their employers. Will they grow apathetic as they get older? Depends whether you give them help or not, and whether it's the right help, I would say. If you give them the wrong help, they just go, oh, why am I going to bother? Why am I going to do that? But I'm hopeful.
I think it might have been a colleague of yours who was at Congress last year who was talking about one of the issues around Gen X is they missed out on defined benefit pensions, but they also missed out on the early auto enrolment as well. So
Correct.
There's a kind of gap in their long-term savings provision, at least.
Yes, no, that's exactly right. So last year, when we were looking at Gen X, so my colleague Julie presented last year, and we looked at the provision of DB, and I think it was 45-year-olds, less than a quarter have any DB provision, but they are of an age which means that they've missed out on 15 years of life or something where they didn't benefit from auto enrolment. And we all know that the eighth wonder of the world is compound interest, and that does have a big problem, or can cause a big problem. So yeah, yeah, that's going to come through.
I didn't know compound interest was the 8th wonder of the world. So
Someone said that. I'm sure someone said that.
yeah, they have now. So
I'm happy to be quoted on that. I'll take that one.
anyway, I think we are out of time now. But so thank you for your engagement. Thank you for all the questions, not just today, but throughout the day as well. And if you just put your hands together for James and for his presentation.